Story 1. This happened about 6 years ago, and I only remembered it because I just learned today that McDonald's also does pumpkin spice latte, so I went to try. Sadly, I was disappointed with today's adventure. I got served lukewarm burnt-flavored coffee, but was already home when I first tried it. Oh, well. A bit of backstory. This takes place in a city that is near the border to both France and Switzerland, and is also considered a university city. So there are always a lot of people, and the customers involved were speaking in French. I can understand it when I really pay attention, but can't speak the language. At the time, I was in an apprenticeship for graphic design, and within 5 minutes from the school I had been attending, there was both a Starbucks and McDonald's. I was in my last year, which meant long school days could last anywhere between 5–6 p.m., and on such a day, I went out to get a much-needed energy boost. And for me, that comes in the form of chai lattes rather than coffee. During my break, I was just going to pop into the nearby Starbucks, grab me a grand chai latte, then return to study, do some catch-up work, or get ahead on some projects. Sadly, it was packed. They were literally lined up out the door, which is not too unbelievable for the city. So, I decided to try the next best location, McDonald's. They were also packed, but on this day, the cafe was luckily empty. So with that, I head in and wait behind this group of 4 young women. As the title says, they were Karens, or Karens in the making. There was only one worker behind the counter, and these women were upset because they couldn't get what they wanted. I can't remember if it was out of stock or if the machine required in making it was out of order, but these Karens were not having it. They were demanding to speak with someone in charge, but without letting her leave to get said person, only to get even more upset when said person in charge was not appearing. This worker was obviously exhausted and was constantly suggesting that they order something else. I think it took 5 minutes of her repeating, "I'm sorry, but you'll have to order something else," before they finally relented, but not without saying that they wanted their order not only upgraded, but for free for wasting their time. So while they were doing that, she asked me what I wanted, so I placed my order. Boy, did that set those Karens off, especially seeing the worker start working on my order. So, they rushed to the counter and placed their orders. Thankfully, McDonald's cafe is not so free with customization as Starbucks is, at least it's not to my knowledge, but they sure did go for the more complicated items on the menu. All the while, being sure to remind this poor worker that they wanted it all upgraded for free. This girl said, the only way that could happen is if they had ordered something, started drinking it, only to realize that there was something wrong with their orders, otherwise, they would have to pay. She even withheld their orders until they finally coughed up the money. They grumbled as they retrieved their orders and chose a table that was within sight of the counter, so they could loudly complain the entire time and shoot this poor girl nasty glares. The worker asked if I was all right with waiting a few minutes, so she could quickly go to the bathroom. And while I did want to just get my order and start heading back as I had nearly waited the entire half hour watching the mess with the Karens, I agreed. At this point, I figured if I was late, a few more minutes wouldn't hurt. She came back, looking much refreshed and far more calm, and looking eager to finish my order. A few minutes later, she places a cup on the counter and tells me the cost. It took me a few seconds before realizing that the medium that I ordered was now $1,000. I only ordered a medium though. I know, I just wanted to apologize for the long wait and any problems you had while here. Oh, and how much is the $1,000 again? No, it says in the system a medium, so you only have to pay for a medium. I hope you have a great day. With a wink, the worker left after giving me my change and returned to the main part of McDonald's, leaving me with a free upgrade while the Karens stared at me in absolute shock. Story 2. I have worked at a petting zoo for almost 4 years as the manager. Luckily, I don't get a lot of entitled parents because most of them find animals disgusting. However, there are some rare moments when I meet one. While I was feeding our ducks and chickens some bread, a woman walked up to me with her child around 8 years old. "What are you doing?" with a snare in her voice. I looked up and told her I was just feeding the animals. But why are you feeding them bread? It's 3 p.m. They always get bread around this time. They will follow you around until you give them bread. During this entire conversation, I kept giving bread. Well, I've worked with animal rescue for 10 years now, and I can tell you, bread is deadly. I have my degree in animal care, and let me tell you, in my country, they let anyone join animal rescues because they need every help they can get, even if you don't have a degree. That might be right, but I've never had a problem with any of my animals because of bread, and it's not the only thing we feed them. Well, I've worked with animal rescue for over 10 years, and it's deadly. If my animals ever get sick because of bread, I will stop, but as long as that isn't the case, I want. Sick? She scoffs. They won't get sick. They will die. Well, that's odd, I told her. What is? She asks in the most sharp tone I've ever heard. For some dead animals, they seem pretty alive to me. Might be zombie ducks. Huh. Let me be clear, they always wait at 3 for food. Not just bread, but just anything. Vegetables, bread, seeds. They don't eat bread daily, and if they do eat bread, it's not a lot, just a few slices. Karen walks away with her daughter. While I'm still feeding bread, I spot Karen picking bamboo leaves out of our bamboo in the corner of my eye. Normally when people do this, they will feed it to the goats, which isn't allowed. I always say something about it, but this time I was just waiting. She walks into the goat pen and starts feeding bamboo. I walk over there and say, "Miss, you can't feed TH." She stops me with a big smile saying, "It's just bamboo leaves. I've worked with pet rescues over 10 years now and it's healthy." That might be the case with some bamboo, but there are over 50 kinds, and some might cut the tongue of the goats because of the sharp edges. It happened before. I was saying nonsense, by the way, but she didn't need to know that, but they are sharp on the edges. Karen says, "It was probably something else that did that." I don't want to find out. If you are going to feed them, then please give them from that tree. And I gesture towards the curly hazel tree. Ugh, fine. I got my coffee. While I was watching in the distance, I saw her leaving the pen. We have 2 fences which you need to pass to enter the goat pen so the goats can't escape. If they do, it's usually just the first fence they got by, and it just so happened Karen didn't stop the goats, and they got through the first fence. I see her trying to get the goats back. Trying wasn't the right word. She held the gate open and told the goats, "Go back, come on, go back." My volunteer was trying to help her, but she sent him away. My volunteers came to me and told me that the goats escaped. I told them, "It's okay. She has worked 10 years with animal rescue. She must know what she is doing." I had some visitors come by who I knew and told me the same thing. The goats escaped, and I told them the same thing. It's okay, she has worked with animal rescue for over 10 years, she knows what she's doing. I kept watching her trying to get the goats back from a distance while drinking my coffee. Her daughter was at least doing something. She pushed some goats back, but it didn't work because Mommy Dearest kept the gate open so the rest could go back as well. I kid you not, it took her 25 minutes to get 5 goats back. All the while I've been drinking my coffee and just watched. She walked back with her child towards the exit. While she passed me, she thanked me for my help. I smiled at her and said, "You've worked in animal rescue for over 10 years, so I thought you didn't need my help." She looked at me with disgust and walked out of the petting zoo. Story 3. So this happened back in August. My son's great-grandma and her husband would pick up my son, who is 3 years old and autistic, from daycare every day, and would keep him until I get off work. The day the assault occurred was on a Friday. I had Fridays off at the time, but I only dropped my son off at daycare that day to run errands, and plus I had an appointment. If I took my son to daycare on Fridays, the entitled great-grandma would always ask me if I needed her or her husband to pick my son up. I went to daycare only to find out my son was already picked up. I texted the grandma to let her know I was on my way to pick him up. No one was home when I arrived to her house. Tried calling and texting her, but no answer. I drove to a nearby park instead of driving all the way home. She called back 20 minutes later, and I politely let her know that I would like for her to let me know if she's going to pick up my son. She replied, "Whatever," and hung up. As soon as I arrived at her house, she said that I need to stop being ignorant, in reference to what I told her earlier. I told her it was only common courtesy to let me know if she's going to pick up my child. Then the grandma asked if I had received her text message earlier that day. I told her I hadn't noticed if I received a message. Sometimes I clear my notifications without looking at what they are. She told me his grandma, her daughter, wanted to see my son. She didn't ask, she told me. I told her that grandma has a phone and she can call, text, and ask me. I don't do the whole pass the message along nonsense. Entitled grandma followed me outside as I'm taking my son to my car. She got in my face and pointed her finger, telling me I needed to knock my nonsense off. I opened my mouth to respond to her, and she grabbed me by my throat, leaving a bruise. She denied ever doing such a thing and claimed she only pushed me. Of course, my son was scared and screaming. Her husband got in between us and had to separate us. As I got in the car, she was laughing and playing with my son as if nothing happened. I told her to get away from him, and she said, "Or what? What are you going to do?" Police were called, and I filed an emergency restraining order until there was a hearing to determine if it's needed to be a permanent restraining order. Fast forward to 2 days ago, there was the hearing. Judge listened to both sides, and the entitled grandma lied about 99% of her testimony. She claimed she was in fear for her own safety, and all I did was yell and scream at her. Her husband claimed he didn't see anything. Anyways, during the court hearing, the judge granted the restraining order for 3 years for me and my son. She did not once take responsibility for her actions. Her response to the judgment was, "Well, I don't think it's right that she's taking away my great-grandson." The judge put her in her place by telling her that the mother me has constitutional rights to her child, not her. And she also told the grandma that I have every right to protect my child. That entitled witch still responded, "Well, I don't think it's right." What a crazy woman. Story 4. This happened around 10 years ago when I was working for a major airline in the Northeast. I was relatively new to the company, but had worked the job before with another airline. I was a baggage handler, aka a ramp rat, and worked in an inherently dangerous environment. Because it was so dangerous working around planes, the airline was big on safety training. Unfortunately, one employee didn't take things as seriously. She was there for the benefits, for example, free flights. My first encounter with this employee showed just how lazy she was. We had teams of 3-5 employees who would be assigned a few flights per shift. The rule was for us to be at the gate 15 minutes before arrival. She would hide in the break room until hearing the plane was on the ground and then come out. Meanwhile, we would be grabbing bag carts, organizing loading equipment, and prepping gear for the departing flight after we turned the plane. She would saunter out, pick up her wands, and do as little as possible. Other times she would hide out in parked cars with the heater running until the plane was practically parked. One day I was working for a different team, and we drove to the bag room to drop off the baggage from a flight. She was already there, taking up the whole belt with 4 carts that she was leisurely unloading alone. Bagroom courtesy dictated that we jump on her carts and help offload quickly, and plus we needed to use the same belt, so we started emptying the back 2 carts. I was unloading the 4th cart, and my coworkers were unloading the 3rd, when we heard a motor turn over. We all looked up to see this employee in the driver's seat of her tug. My arm was in the cart grabbing a bag. One coworker was doing the same in the 3rd, but our other coworker had stepped between the 2 bag carts to disconnect them. I yanked my arm back, and my coworker grabbed the guy between the carts and literally yanked him off his feet out from between the carts as she floored it, and the carts shot forward at full speed. The speed limit in the bagroom was 5 mph, plus procedure required that you honk twice and count to 5 before moving, when in close proximity to other people. If he had been caught between the carts, he would have been run over by a cart weighing over 200 pounds empty, and this one was full of around 40 bags. We all shouted at her, she slammed on the brakes, and sauntered back to us. We all yelled at her, "What the heck? You nearly killed this guy." "Don't be yelling at me like that," she left a minute later. We unloaded, and then went to the ramp safety coordinator to report the event. As expected, nothing came of it. This employee had figured out how to work the system. We could pick up extra shifts at a straight time. She would pick up overnight shifts and sleep. She would literally show up with a sleeping bag and a portable DVD player and hide in the women's locker room. Since the overnight supervisor was a guy, he was not allowed to go in without an emergency call unless he had someone from HR with him. So she was getting paid to sleep. Sleeping on company property, even in the break room, had been banned ever since a ramp rat at another airline had fallen asleep in the cargo bin and woken up on the runway. They managed to keep that aircraft at a safe altitude and the guy was fine, but he was fired on the spot. Even the pilots were technically prohibited from sleeping in the crew room. Though the corporate understood the benefit of rested flight crews and quietly ignored this technical breach of policy. Her undoing finally came later that year. She was working a shift in the bag room on the loading belts. This was where outgoing bags were sorted and distributed to their flights. She was working a flight to Florida. One cart had been filled and dragged to the pickup, and she started a second cart. She then fell asleep in her chair, as she was known to do. We loaded the Florida flight and called back to the bagroom lead to see if there were any more bags. He walked over to the belt and saw 2 bags on the belt. He grabbed them and asked her if there were any more bags for Florida. She said no, and he drove the 2 out to us. The flight departed on time. About 15 minutes after it left, she sauntered up to the bagroom lead and said something akin to, "Are they coming back? I still got like 30 bags for Florida." I was not there to see it, but a source I trust told me that this guy's face went absolutely pale. This was a major issue, since we had a large number of passengers on a flight without their bags, heading to a city where we did not have another flight until the next day at the earliest. Since she had caused this issue by sleeping on the job, there was finally enough reason for the corporation to fire her finally this time. Unfortunately, it took inconveniencing paying passengers, rather than almost maiming or killing a coworker, to get her out the door. Story 5. So this story happened last week, and I am excited to share it with you all. So a little background info. I am a first-degree black belt in Taekwondo, and I'm an instructor as well. I work alongside 2 other instructors, and we make a pretty good team. Since everything has been reopening, we continue to teach, and we had a policy that if you are vaccinated, you don't need to wear a mask when inside. Now to the story. So it was just me and one other instructor, we'll call Instructor James, working that day, and we just finished teaching a class of kids, so we had a few minutes of downtime. In walks the entitled parent and her kid. I didn't hear the kid talk much, so I couldn't tell if he was entitled or not. My friend went over to greet them and see whether or not they may be interested in signing up for a class. James: "Hello, I'm Instructor James. Are you interested in our martial arts program?" The entitled parent: Yeah, I want my kid to get his black belt." "Oh, that sounds great. If you want, we can start off with a trial day to see if he likes it, then we can work out a membership plan." "I'm sorry, you must have misheard me. I want my kid to have a black belt. Is there one you can give to him?" Once I heard those words, my attention was 100% focused on this idiot of a mom. One important thing about Taekwondo: even if you were the best of the best, you are required to train for at least 1 year before getting a black belt. And this woman thinks she can get one in 1 minute. It took me 5 years to get my black belt, and I know damn well my friend ain't going to give one to her kid. "James, sorry, but I cannot give your child a black belt. He needs to train and work his way up all the belt levels." Entitled parent: "Look, I'm in a hurry, so how about I buy one? How much will it cost?" "The belts are not for sale." "Oh, come on, look, I got $100 here. Now can I have the damn belt?" "I'm sorry, but we cannot just sell black belts to anyone." The conversation was getting louder with this woman on the edge of yelling, so I walked up to our mini office where my partner and this entitled parent was talking and poked my head in. "Me, hello. Is everything all right over here? Entitled parent. No, this is not all right. This man won't give my son his black belt. I'm sorry, ma'am, but your son needs to go through the entire course to be able to qualify for a black belt. But if you have proof of him learning in a different school for Taekwondo, we can possibly give him a belt equal to his previous one. I knew I messed up the moment I said that, because that tiny sliver of hope I gave to this entitled parent was enough to make her continue her frenzy for another 15 minutes. She straightens up and speaks in a professional tone. Well, my son has been learning Taekwondo for the past 3 years at this school in town and got his black belt there. Me, do you have any proof? Pictures? Payment plans? His previous belt? Of course. Hold on a moment. She began to search through her purse and she got her phone. Then she started to find pictures, just Google images of people wearing black belts. These images were either too blurry or you couldn't see the person's face to correctly identify them. Some even had watermarks on them, which I found hilarious. Me, I'm sorry, but we need more proof than this. And from the looks of the different uniforms and logos, these are all from different schools. Her. Well, my son has been to many different places, but he never felt challenged. He was always the best, so we just kept changing schools to match his potential. I already know this isn't going anywhere, so I don't try to encourage this human garbage disposal. James, just to make this clear, what happened to your son's original belt? She hesitates for 5 seconds. Well, he lost his belt, so we are trying to get a new one in time for his tournament tomorrow. Look, I'm sorry, but the only way I can give your son a black belt is if you show more concrete proof, and that's if he is signing up for a membership here. My friend just sits back and waits for her response while I decided to talk with the kid. Me, hey, how's it going? Kid, all right. Me, how long have you been doing Taekwondo? Kid, The kid was obviously shy and didn't want to be here, so I didn't push him on the subject and instead went back to the office. James, look, I'm sorry, but we cannot give your son a black belt. End of story. The entitled parent was fuming. I will get you fired. With this, she rushes out the door, nearly pulling the kid's arm off, trying to drag him out. I simply look at my friend, and he gives me a tired look, knowing full well that this woman was not the first nor last entitled parent we will face. Story 6. This one also takes place when I was around 16. This logic surrounding this one always was a mystery because, quite frankly, I see myself as a regular dude, but me, cross the lovely nickname that I use. Zoe, best friend from high school. Corey, another best friend from high school. Mark, the entitled kid, and Karen, the entitled mother. There's also Corey's mom. So this occurred around my summer break. I was just chilling one day on the couch when Corey, a good pal of mine from high school, came over. What we did that day wasn't important, but the main thing is that before he left, he asked me if I could sleep over at his place for a few days, along with Zoe. My stepdad, just dad, since, close as real father and son, said that's perfectly fine, just as long as I don't cause any trouble. Just a parent watching out for his teenager. My mom was a little reluctant at first, as she didn't want her precious baby to be away from mommy, but my dad just told her that I'm not a kid, and that he trusts Corey's parents. My parents are good friends with Corey, since I've known the guy since I was like 10. My mom relented in the end. My mother is a different can of worms that might be opened at a later time. The next morning, Corey's mom picked me up from my house along with Zoe. An unfamiliar face is Mark, who's Corey's cousin, and the entitled kid of this story. We went to Corey's place and then did a bunch of regular teenager stuff. Now, I don't know if it was the oh-so-obvious signs poking out, but I got the distinct impression that Mark didn't like me. For example, we were at a convenience store buying a bunch of snacks and whatnot. I offered to pay for everything. It was like $15 total. Mark scoffed and said that he could easily pay for all of that, and that I didn't have to show off how rich I was, which earned him shut up from Corey. He also tried showing off, like he tried to get us to call him Iron Man. You can cringe. Because I have a cool nickname, and it's only fair that he also has one. The prime example is when we were coming home from the movies. It was nighttime, and we ran into a bit of traffic. It got a bit long, so Zoe ended up falling asleep on my shoulder. I didn't really care, since she was tired, and it's not really something I considered a romantic gesture. I at one point noticed that Mark, however, who was sitting at the front, was glaring at me. He turned away the minute I saw him. Fast forward to everyone preparing for bed. I went downstairs to get a glass of milk. Don't judge me, I like milk. As I was doing that, I felt someone tap me on the shoulder. Mark, hey, we need to talk. Me, oh, sure, what's up? Mark, don't think I didn't notice what you're trying to do. Me, huh Mark, don't play dumb. I know you're trying to show off in front of Zoe so that she doesn't date me. Me, if I was drinking my milk, I probably would have spat it out. Come again? Mark, you heard me. Stay away from her. I'm the only one she needs, and I will not let you have her. Me, okay 1, she's not an object, and 2, she's not yours. Mark, I didn't say she was. Me, that was heavily implied. Mark, whatever, just stay away from her if you know what's good for you. Me laughing, and I then patted him on the head. Sure pal, whatever you say. He huffed, and then went upstairs. I just rolled my eyes and finished off my milk. When I went up to Corey's room, he asked me this. Corey, hey Cross, I saw my cousin come up the stairs earlier. He seemed pissed when he went in the guest room. Something happened? Me, oh nothing, just regular teenage crushes, I guess. He looked at me confused, and I told him what happened downstairs. He rolled his eyes and said he'll talk to Mark about it. The next morning we're having breakfast. Zoe's the last one to show up. Mark pulls up the chair next to him and offers her to sit there. She does, and he gives me a smug look. I just ignored him and went about eating my breakfast. Now, you'd think the fact that I said nothing would give him some sense of satisfaction, because you'd think the silence would make him go something like, "Ha, I beat you." But instead, he stood up and slammed his hands on the table, crying about, asking why he can't be cooler than me and that I'm always trying to make him look lame. I did not see that coming. Corey's mom took Mark to the living room to cool down, while the rest of us were just bemused by this entire situation. But eventually, we just decided we didn't care and went on with our breakfast. Today was the day that Mark's mom was supposed to pick him up. He was going home earlier. Suffice it to say that when she arrived, she did not go quietly. When she arrived and found Mark crying, the following when occurred. Entitled Mother, what did Corey do this time? According to Corey, he and his cousin never got along. Corey's mother, I don't know. He just started getting upset at Cross for no reason. I want to speak to this little brat right now. Corey's mom called us into the living room. Are you that Cross brat? Me, that's me. What did you do to my baby? Nothing. Well, he wouldn't just cry for no reason. That's exactly what he's doing. No, I want to know what you did right now. Corey, I think I know what this is about. Corey reiterated everything I told him yesterday to his mom, and she just rolled her eyes. The entitled mother was fuming. Mark tried to interject, but Corey told him to be quiet and that this could have all been avoided had Mark not been jealous of someone he's known for less than a week. Corey's mother, right? Nothing happened. It's just your kid being a brat like normal. Entitled mother, no, this little brat made my baby cry. He deserves to be taught some respect. Turns to Zoe and you. Why won't you date my son? Is he not good enough for you? Zoe looked perplexed. I was pissed. Corey looked like he was about to take someone down. However, I think we should appreciate the true hero of this story. Corey's mom, okay, that's it. Take your brat and get out. Now. How could you? You'd side with this brat over your own nephew. Shut up. The entitled mother froze in place, like a deer in headlights. Corey's mother, I am sick of you and your brat. I gave him another chance. Another chance to stay here, hoping that you improved your miserable parenting and taught him that the world doesn't revolve around him. But it seems nothing has changed. because you somehow think it's okay to shout and scream at a bunch of 16-year-olds, just because your spoiled brat can't accept that a girl who has no obligation to date him is not interested, and that he thinks that a kid who's just trying to enjoy his summer break is trying to be cooler than him. Now, get your miserable self out of here, and if you ever come within a 5-mile radius of here again, the police will see you out." Everyone was stunned. Then, after a moment of silence, the entitled mother huffed, grabbed her little brat, who was still crying, and ran out. "After that whole thing, we just continued our breakfast. I haven't seen that guy ever since, but if he ever saw me again, I think he'd be pretty pissed. Anyhow, I hope you got some giggles out of this one. Peace."